You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Hello, and thanks for joining Revolution 250, where we look at events that took place 250 years ago this week. This is from the American Revolution Podcast, a short bonus episode to remind you about these important anniversaries from the Revolutionary War. This week, we remember the first battle in Virginia, which took place at Hampton on October 26th and 27th, 1775. The Revolutionary War for much of 1775 was centered around the siege of Boston, as well as efforts in New York to involve Quebec in the fighting. The central and southern colonies had taken actions to overthrow their governments, but had seen relatively little combat. In the spring of that year, Virginia Royal Governor Lord Dunmore secured gunpowder being held in the Williamsburg magazine, moving it to a British warship. This caused a response. Patrick Henry led hundreds of armed militia to demand its return. Eventually, the militia disbanded without actually fighting, receiving only a promise that the town would be reimbursed for the cost of the gunpowder. But the controversies continued to stir the militia against the governor. To avoid capture, Dunmore retreated with his family, leaving Williamsburg for his hunting lodge in York County. The militia eventually chased him down there. Dunmore escaped, but took a musket ball in the leg in the process. He and his family found refuge aboard the British 24-gun warship, the Foey, on the York River. From there, Dunmore continued his efforts to govern the colony, but with little effect. A short time later, a second Navy ship, the 14-gun Otter, joined the Foey. The ships could do little to control those on land, and they limited their actions to settlements along the shore, where they used smaller tender ships to land and confiscate supplies and livestock. These ships all moved to the area around Norfolk. In September, a hurricane blew up the east coast, causing one of the smaller tender ships, the Liberty, to be blown ashore and grounded. The commander of the ship, Lieutenant Squire, made it back to the Otter, but the local militia captured and took prisoner 13 other crew members. The militia also seized the ship's guns and naval stores and then set the ship on fire. Several of the white crew members who were captured were later released and returned to the British, but the black crew members were found to be escaped slaves and were returned to their owners. Lieutenant Squire demanded the return of the ship's guns, which was refused. After a local newspaper criticized Squire, Lord Dunmore had the press seized and moved it to his ship, where he began to produce his own newspaper. In retaliation for destruction of the ship, Lieutenant Squire let it be known that he intended to attack Hampton and wreak his revenge. On the night of October 25th, Squire led a raid of 4 small tender ships on the homes just outside the mouth of the Hampton River. His ships, though, found the water blocked by several vessels that were sunk there to prevent just such a raid. They also encountered several dozen local militia ready and waiting for them on both sides of the river. The 2 sides opened fire, but after an hour, the ships withdrew. Overnight, the British cleared the sunken ships from the channel, and the next morning, the 4 tender ships moved in once again. Also overnight, though, 50 riflemen from Williamsburg arrived to confront the British. The riflemen were able to pick off soldiers and sailors from the decks out in the river. Under a withering fire, in which one of the ships was actually captured after it got too close to shore, the remaining ships withdrew. The British lost 10 captured, plus several dead and wounded, while the militia managed to avoid any casualties, despite taking fire by the ship's cannons. The ships never got close enough to Hampton itself to do any damage. The action showed how little the British could do to compel the obedience in Virginia with the small number of forces available to them. I hope you've enjoyed this Revolution 250 moment. I originally covered these events in episode 69 of the American Revolution podcast. I encourage you to subscribe for free on whatever podcast platform you like. Thanks again for listening to this Revolution 250 moment on the American Revolution podcast.